The judge's gavel had not even touched the desk when America's most respected billionaire walked into court wearing the same old watch he had owned for 20 years. Everyone expected a battle of money and power. Instead, the courtroom went silent when a former employee placed a hidden recording on the table that could destroy the empire built by Daniel Whitmore. Daniel Whitmore, founder of Whitmore Energy Systems, was known across America as the billionaire who never forgot a name. From a small garage in Colorado, he had created one of the country's largest clean energy companies. At 70 years old, he lived quietly on a ranch outside Boulder, where he spent mornings repairing fences and evenings reading letters from ordinary families helped by his foundation. But behind the polished offices of his company, a dangerous plan was moving forward. The man leading that plan was Victor Hale, Daniel's longtime chief executive officer. Victor wore expensive suits, collected luxury cars, and smiled only when cameras were nearby. For years, he had convinced investors that he was the reason Whitmore Energy continued growing. Privately, he believed Daniel had become too soft and too emotional to control the company. During a private board meeting in New York, Victor presented documents claiming Daniel was damaging shareholder value. He suggested removing Daniel as chairman and replacing him with a more aggressive leadership team. Several board members looked uncomfortable. Daniel sat quietly, studying the papers without anger. "Power without responsibility destroys everything it touches," Daniel finally said. Victor laughed softly. "That sounds inspiring, Daniel, but companies are not built on feelings." The vote was delayed, but the damage had already started. News outlets reported rumors that Daniel was losing control of his own company. For the first time in decades, strangers questioned the man they once admired. Then came the betrayal. Sarah Whitmore, Daniel's only daughter and the president of the company's charitable foundation, discovered that thousands of families waiting for solar energy assistance had been removed from a program without explanation. The decision came from an internal department controlled by Victor. Sarah confronted him in his office. "Those families trusted us," she said, holding the files tightly. Victor barely looked up from his desk. "Businesses survive by cutting weakness. Sentiment does not pay bills." Sarah walked out with tears in her eyes. She knew something was wrong, but she did not yet know how deep the corruption went. Days later, Daniel received an anonymous envelope at his ranch. Inside were photographs, financial records, and a handwritten note warning him that the company's future was being stolen from inside. The records showed secret payments made through several shell companies connected to Victor's closest advisors. The evidence was incomplete, but enough to reveal a disturbing pattern. Daniel did not call the media. He did not accuse Victor publicly. Instead, he asked his private investigator, Maria Torres, to quietly uncover the truth. Maria had worked with Daniel for 15 years and knew his values. She expected anger. She found something else. "He is trying to take everything you built," Maria said. Daniel looked across the quiet ranch fields as the sunset disappeared behind the mountains. "Then the truth has to be stronger than his lies," he replied. As the investigation continued, Victor made his biggest move. He convinced several investors that Daniel's health was failing and that the company needed immediate leadership changes. Rumors spread faster than facts. At a crowded shareholder meeting in Chicago, cameras captured Victor confidently announcing a new era for Whitmore Energy. But before the final vote, the doors opened. An unexpected person entered the room carrying a small black folder. It was Michael Reed, the former head accountant who had disappeared 6 months earlier after questioning suspicious transactions. His face showed exhaustion, but his hands were steady. The room froze. Victor's confident expression vanished. Michael placed the folder on the table and looked directly at Daniel. "The reason I vanished was because someone threatened my family," he said. "But the evidence inside this folder proves Victor Hale planned everything." Nobody moved. Victor stepped forward, demanding security remove him. But Michael opened the folder and revealed the final document. The document contained a signature that changed everything, and it belonged to someone Daniel trusted more than anyone. The signature was not Victor's alone. It connected the betrayal to a person inside Daniel's closest circle, someone who had attended family dinners, celebrated company victories, and stood beside him during the hardest moments of his life. Daniel stared at the page, unable to speak. The room waited for his reaction. Victor smiled nervously, realizing the next few seconds would decide whether his empire survived or collapsed forever. Outside, reporters gathered as truth prepared to explode. Inside, Daniel turned the page, revealing a shocking, unexpected name. The signature belonged to Daniel's longtime personal attorney, Richard Collins, the man who had handled the Whitmore family's legal affairs for nearly 30 years. The revelation stunned everyone because Richard had always appeared loyal, calm, and trustworthy. Daniel slowly placed the document back on the table. His face showed disappointment, not anger. The room expected an explosion, but the billionaire remained silent. Victor noticed the silence and tried to take control again. "This proves nothing," he said loudly. "Anyone can create paperwork and make accusations." But Michael Reed stepped forward with another folder. Inside were emails, bank records, and recorded conversations showing Victor and Richard had secretly planned to transfer ownership of several valuable company assets into private accounts. The evidence changed everything. Federal investigators arrived weeks later. The investigation revealed that Victor had manipulated financial reports, hidden losses, and attempted to remove Daniel from the company he created. Richard admitted he helped because Victor promised him a fortune after the takeover. For Daniel, the betrayal hurt more than the financial damage. Richard had attended family celebrations, watched Sarah grow up, and stood beside Daniel during the company's earliest struggles. One evening at the ranch, Sarah found her father sitting alone near the old wooden fence. "After everything they did, how can you stay so calm?" she asked. Daniel looked across the fields where he had spent decades building a life beyond money. "Because anger can destroy a person before justice arrives," he answered. The trial became one of America's biggest corporate fraud cases of the year. Cameras surrounded the courthouse, but Daniel avoided the spotlight. Instead of attacking Victor publicly, he focused on restoring the trust of employees and families affected by the corruption. During the trial, former employees testified about Daniel's leadership. They described how he personally helped workers during difficult times, paid medical expenses for employees' families, and refused to abandon communities that depended on his company. Victor's defense tried to portray him as a businessman who simply made aggressive decisions. But the evidence showed a different story. He had chosen greed over responsibility. The jury reached a decision after several hours. Victor Hale and Richard Collins were found guilty of fraud, conspiracy, and financial crimes. Victor received a lengthy prison sentence, and his luxurious lifestyle disappeared almost overnight. But Daniel's greatest decision came after the trial. Many expected him to remove everyone connected to the scandal and rebuild with fear. Instead, he created a new company ethics program, increased employee protections, and established a fund to support families harmed by the corruption. At a press conference outside Whitmore Energy Systems, reporters asked why he chose forgiveness instead of revenge. Daniel looked toward the employees standing behind him. "Success is not measured by what someone keeps," he said. "It is measured by what someone gives back when everything is tested." Years later, Daniel's story became an example taught in business schools across America. Students studied not only how he built a billion-dollar company, but how he protected his values when powerful people tried to destroy them. Sarah eventually became the company's new leader, carrying forward her father's belief that businesses existed to serve people, not only profits. Michael Reed returned as chief financial officer, known as the man who risked everything to reveal the truth. The employees who once feared losing their jobs became the strongest supporters of the company's new future. On a quiet morning at the Colorado ranch, Daniel walked past the same fence he had repaired years earlier. The world saw him as a billionaire, but those closest to him knew something more important. They saw a man who proved that integrity could survive betrayal, kindness could defeat greed, and truth could outlast even the most powerful lies. The empire that Victor tried to steal was never truly built from buildings, money, or contracts. It was built from trust. And when that trust was tested, Daniel Whitmore proved that a person's greatest fortune was never the wealth they collected. It was the legacy they left behind. The story of Daniel Whitmore continued to inspire people who believed success should come with responsibility. Young entrepreneurs visited the company to learn how honesty shaped every decision. Employees remembered that during the darkest moment, Daniel never blamed innocent people or abandoned those who depended on him. His final years were spent quietly supporting education, clean energy projects, and families facing hardship. He rarely spoke about the betrayal that nearly destroyed his life. Instead, he spoke about the importance of choosing character when temptation appeared. Because in the end, Daniel did not save only his company. He saved the meaning behind it. An American never forgot the billionaire who proved that true power came from integrity. His legacy remained a reminder that truth always finds its way home.